back and talk, you touched on it with Mexico, and I think the synthetic drugs pose a very different challenge than the drugs that required agriculture, for lack of a better term, in the case of coca and so forth. These synthetic drugs largely are, the key is these precursor chemicals, right? The raw materials that you put together to make these synthetic drugs. I understand the chain, the way it works. While there are multiple places that produce the precursors, right now it's the bulk of it is coming from 2 provinces in China and a handful of companies. These things can be bought online, darknet, internet, and they are then shipped in cargo containers that are mislabeled with the help of certain brokers who will bribe officials and or help file fictitious paperwork, are brought into Mexico. These precursors are then distributed to these small-scale labs that basically manufacture the stuff, and they also need the equipment, the pill presses and so forth, and then they sell their manufactured product to transport specialists, and those who, primarily the 2 that are the big ones that are in the business of doing this are the two Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels in Mexico, who then for a premium fee are the ones who move it across the border and into the hands of distribution networks inside of the United States. Is that an accurate description of that chain?
Yes, sir. The majority of the precursors are coming from PRC, and they are trafficked into Mexico various ways. You are right. It is a diffuse command and control structure in how it's produced, and then the major cartels move it back in the U.S.
So the reason why I asked is, so unlike coca, which was grown, agriculturally, and then these labs out in the jungle would put it together and the cartels would move it and so forth, and they had vertically integrated in Colombia for a while. The difference here is, I agree 100% that we need to do a better job of monitoring and stopping it at the border, attacking it at the street level, diminishing the demand in our own country and so forth. But it seems to me that the key here, part of the key, is disrupting the influx of both the precursor chemicals and to some extent the technologies, the pill presses and other equipment that they are using to bring this stuff together. And I don't know how we do that without the cooperation of the Mexican government, who has to be willing at their ports of entry, particularly these cargo ships come in, to use a variety of methods to stop these precursors from coming in. These precursors have legitimate uses. They exist for other reasons, but obviously when they're being shipped for a certain purpose, certain quantities into Mexico, there's real suspicion. And I don't, again, we don't want to divulge tactics in some ways because it undermines it, but what is there a strategy being thought of, and who is in charge of developing, and that's maybe why the DEA should be here today, a strategy that theoretically could work at disrupting the influx of these precursor chemicals that are necessary to cook this stuff up, and the equipment, I would add. So who's in charge of that? Who's doing the thinking about what creative ways we can use to crack down on that end of the supply chain?
Sir, this is our top priority from a security perspective in the whole region, and the White House is directly involved. From the president on down, we're working on this all the time. When you talk about border security, port security, you're looking at DHS.
But I'm talking about the Mexican ports. So
and then with INL supporting from the building partner capabilities within Mexico. So this is a partnered effort between State Department and DHS and DOJ, and it's a comprehensive approach. We absolutely are focusing on trying to stop the precursors. There's been advancements over the last year in working with PRC. They did in 2019 stop fentanyl, but they are still the source for precursors. We have had a number of engagements, started last year with the president and Xi Jinping, and then it culminated this January with a working group meeting that my boss went to along with the White House. And we are starting to improve our coordination with the PRC government on this, but that is critical. We have to remember that some of these precursors are going through the United States, so this is also internal to the United States that we need to be working on this. So when we talk about the border, it's flowing both ways, and we're trying to work with the Mexicans on our southern border to have like the layered security that we use on both sides, and we have a number of initiatives in INL to improve border security working with the Mexicans. And then port security is also critical. So what you have here is multiple U.S. government agencies involved in improving information sharing, improving capacities, working more closely with our Mexican counterparts. You are right, it is a totally new game with synthetics.
But going to the chairman's question about Mexican cooperation, the key here is not simply how many people are they stationing at the border to search trucks. It really begins with how willing and capable are they, the key being willing, and obviously the capabilities we can help provide, but there has to be the willingness to actually put in place things that slow or diminish and put a dent in the entry of these precursors into Mexico. And I ask that because Mexico has a growing consumption problem. It's no longer the U.S. There is now a growing fentanyl consumption problem, not just in Mexico, but in multiple other countries in the region. So whether it's under the current president there now, after the new election, I think at some point Mexico is going to be facing a crisis in regards to this, that will look somewhat like ours. They may have an incentive to do, but at this stage, given the chairman's question, how is that level of cooperation and willingness to identify this as a problem and address it? Because it's a lot easier to go after the precursors, try to go after the precursors, than it is to go raid 1,000 little labs.
That is absolutely true. I will say this, we have strong cooperation across the board. Our interdiction results are dramatically increasing. We are
Of the precursors.
Precursors and the
product.
pills and the fentanyl powder and the pill presses. I think DHS would be able to give you better statistics about what we have been seizing on the U.S. law enforcement side, but we're seeing advances across the board. It's still, a dent, and we have a lot of room to improve, but we are seeing this cooperation, and I think both countries, the fact that we're part of this trilateral commission with Canada shows that we're really trying to approach it, all three countries, since this is also a problem that's affecting Canada.